Welcome to the deep dive. We are so glad you're here today.
Absolutely.
So, let's just jump right into something that, frankly, completely shattered my understanding of luxury.
Oh, this is a good one.
Right. Because when you think of imitation pearls, those perfectly smooth, iridescent glass beads, you probably picture, like, high fashion or maybe elegant vintage necklaces.
Sure, classic Hollywood glamour, that sort of thing.
Exactly. But did you know that when imitation pearls were first invented back in 1656, their primary use wasn't for jewelry at all?
It really wasn't.
They were actually manufactured to be used as ornaments for toilets.
It is a rather jarring image, isn't it?
I mean, it's completely wild.
It is. But it perfectly illustrates how our perception of value and adornment and luxury is entirely constructed.
Yeah.
A glass pearl decorating a 17th century toilet bowl might seem absurd to us today, but it highlights this really fundamental truth, which is that jewelry and decorative materials are profound reflections of human sociology, biology, and history.
We assign them meaning.
Precisely. They don't inherently possess it. We give it to them.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. Today, we're taking this incredibly comprehensive document we have. It's called jewelrymakingsecrets.pdf, and we are just breaking it wide open.
There's so much in there.
So much. The goal is to transform you from a casual jewelry wearer into a knowledgeable aficionado. We're going to uncover the ancient history of beads, the actual geological chemistry hiding inside gemstones, the geometry of styling specific pieces for your body type, and the meticulous, almost intimidating craft of making these pieces from scratch.
It's a massive journey.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting right at the very dawn of human adornment. Because this impulse, it goes way, way back.
Way back.
We're talking Neanderthal men and women here.
Right, because that impulse is practically hardwired into our biology. Long before metallurgy or glassblowing even existed, Neanderthals were utilizing whatever their immediate environment provided.
Just whatever was lying around.
Exactly. They were taking bits of stones, leaves, twigs, interesting rocks, and even flowers, and using them to adorn their bodies.
Wow.
And it wasn't about monetary wealth back then. It was about visual signaling, social cohesion, and individual expression. Both men and women participated in this.
Which is fascinating.
It really is. It demonstrates that the urge to decorate the physical form is just this ancient, fundamental human trait.
The idea of weaving twigs and flowers together is beautiful, but obviously, it's transient, it doesn't last.
Right, organic matter decays.
Exactly. So as civilizations built permanence, their jewelry followed suit. Looking at the historical timeline from the source, the sheer scale of bead production in ancient Egypt is just staggering.
Egypt experienced an absolute boom in adornment, but the societal rules governing it were incredibly rigid.
Holy.
Oh, yeah. Beads carried immense sociological weight. So while basic beads were worn by the general population, the truly extravagant beadworks, the pieces crafted from priceless, rare stones, those were strictly regulated.
Legally regulated.
Culturally and functionally, yes. They were reserved almost exclusively for royalty and the extreme upper classes. You would see elaborate beadwork integrated into their footwear, their clothing, and especially in their funeral rites.
To ensure their status in the afterlife, right?
Exactly. You had to look the part for eternity.
That makes sense. And they eventually figured out glass, too.
They did. By the time of the 7th and 8th dynasties, glass beads were introduced. And that democratized the aesthetic a little bit.
Because it's easier to make than mining rare stones.
Precisely. By 1400 BC, Egyptians were manufacturing glass beads for massive markets. The new kingdom of the 18th dynasty essentially became the world's first true glass-making epoch. They were producing quantities and qualities of glass that were just unprecedented.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you have this massive booming industry in Egypt, and then in 1085 BC, right after the fall of the New Kingdom, it just vanishes.
A complete drop-off.
Yeah, glass beads totally disappeared from the region. The industry essentially collapsed. And it wasn't until the Ptolemaic era, when Alexander the Great founded Alexandria, that glass bead making was finally revived.
And when it came back, the designs were vastly more complex.
Right. But that gap is so crazy to me.
Well, that kind of dramatic industrial collapse and rebirth is actually a recurring theme in the history of adornment. Knowledge gets hoarded, lost, and rediscovered.
Like a cycle.
Exactly. For instance, consider Mesopotamia around 3500 BC. They were also manufacturing glass beads, but the recipes for creating that glass were kept as strictly guarded state secrets.
Wow. State secrets for glass.
Yes, because if you controlled the recipe for a beautiful blue glass bead, you controlled a powerful tool for diplomatic trade and royal signaling.
It's crazy to think of a glass recipe being treated like, I don't know, nuclear launch code.
But they were that valuable.
Clearly. And the value people placed on these items only grew over time. I mean, jumping ahead, by the year 1637, beads had become so wildly expensive that they weren't just trade goods anymore, they were a primary currency.
The official exchange rate is mind-boggling.
Right. Traders were actually operating on an exchange rate of 6 beads per single coin.
It makes sense, though, when you consider the labor involved before mass industrialization.
Sure.
Each bead was a miniature work of art. It required intense heat, highly specialized knowledge, and an incredible amount of time.
I was also really struck by how major world events influenced the actual aesthetic designs of these beads. Like take May 15th, 1836.
The solar eclipse.
Yes, there was this major solar eclipse, and glass manufacturers used that specific celestial event as direct inspiration for a whole new line of unique bead designs.
What's fascinating here is how human inspiration for design something as awe-inspiring and terrifying as a total solar eclipse has always been so deeply tied to the natural world. People looked up, they saw the corona of the sun burning around the dark disk of the moon, and the immediate thought of these craftsmen was, how do I capture that exact contrast in molten glass so someone can wear it around their neck?
It's such a beautifully human impulse. And the timeline of that desire to capture and wear the world is so much older than I ever realized.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, in 1922, archaeologists discovered a string of ancient beads that was reliably dated to be 100,000 years old.
100 millennia.
Just think about that. Someone sitting around a fire 100 millennia ago, carefully stringing tiny objects together.
It connects us directly to them.
It really does. But to truly appreciate that ongoing legacy, we need to understand the modern language of the craft today, because there is a whole specialized vocabulary used in worktops right now.
And the terminology is incredibly precise. The shapes dictate the physics of how a piece of jewelry drapes and how it reflects light.
Let's walk through some of these because the names are great. I was looking at bugle beads. From what I understand, these are essentially thin, tubular glass pipes, right? And they can be anywhere from a tiny 2 millimeters up to 35 millimeters long.
That's correct. They give a very sleek, linear look.
Okay, but what about Charlotte? I just love the name. But what makes a Charlotte bead unique?
Charlottes are fascinating because they are a lesson in minimalist geometry. They are also known in the trade as one-cuts.
One-cuts, meaning they only cut it once.
Exactly. Essentially, they are standard, tiny-size 13-seed beads, but the glassmaker cuts exactly one flat facet into the surface of the round bead.
Just one flat side.
Yes. And that single flat edge catches the light in a very subtle, twinkling way that a perfectly round bead simply cannot achieve.
That attention to detail is just wild.
It is.
And then you have chevrons, which sound incredibly labor-intensive. The source says they have multiple corrugated layers of different colored glass fused together. So when you slice the bead and look at the end, it forms a perfect starburst pattern.
They are beautiful. But lampwork beads take that manual labor even further.
Right, lampwork.
Yes, lampwork is basically the antithesis of mass production. Every single lampwork bead is made individually by melting glass rods over a highly focused flame.
Which historically was an oil lamp, right?
Exactly, hence the name lampwork. The artist manipulates the molten glass one bead at a time. And of course, bead makers don't just restrict themselves to glass.
Right. I was amazed by some of the organic materials mentioned in the document. Cinnabar beads, for example.
A classic.
I always assumed cinnabar was a heavy stone. But in jewelry making, it often refers to hand-carved wood that has been heavily coated in a rich red lacquer. It's traditionally manufactured in China.
Yes, very distinct look.
Or cocoa beads, which are literally carved directly out of coconut shells.
The organic materials are resourceful, certainly, but when we transition into traditional gemstones, the conversation really shifts from human craftsmanship to deep geological chemistry.
Oh, the chemistry part is amazing.
The colors you see in a gemstone aren't just aesthetic accidents. They are the visible results of intense chemical reactions happening under massive pressure over huge spans of time.
Let's break down that chemistry because the mechanics behind the colors are fascinating. Take rose quartz.
A very popular stone.
Very popular. It usually has this crackled, slightly clouded appearance. But that signature soft pink color, doesn't actually come from the quartz itself, does it?
No, pure quartz is entirely clear. That clouded pink hue is the direct result of titanium acting as a coloring agent while the crystal is forming deep in the earth.
So it's an impurity.
Yes, it's a microscopic impurity that entirely changes the visual value of the stone. Or look at African bloodstone.
Oh, that one sounds intense.
It's an opaque, dark green stone, but it has these vivid red splatters across it. Those spots are actually hematite and other iron oxides that got trapped inside the mineral matrix while it formed.
I want to ask about amber, too, because that is a completely different geological process.
Very different.
It's not a rock at all.
Correct. Amber is entirely organic. It is the fossilized resin of ancient trees. But it doesn't just harden like dried glue.
Right.
Over millions of years, the original organic compounds undergo a process of natural polymerization.
Polymerization, meaning the molecules are actually restructuring themselves.
Exactly. The individual molecules link together into complex, dense chains, essentially creating a natural plastic. That chemical restructuring is what allows it to survive for millions of years, and it gives it that incredible color range from a dark molasses brown down to a perfectly clear lemon yellow.
And then there's lapis lazuli. I love lapis. That stone looks like a literal starry night sky.
Lapis is actually a rock composed of multiple minerals, which is exactly why you get that celestial effect.
Yay.
The deep blue is the mineral lazurite, but those white speckles you see are calcite, and the little gold flakes that look like stars are actually yellow pyrite fool's gold mixed throughout the structure.
Jasper is another one with wild variations.
Well, jasper's a chameleon.
Right. Depending on what it mixes with in the earth, the color shifts dramatically. If it misses with admixed hematite, which is essentially iron oxide or rust bleeding into the stone, you get this striking brick red or brownish red color.
Yes.
But if that same forming stone mixes with clay instead, it shifts to a muted yellowish white or gray.
If we connect this to the bigger picture understanding these impurities, the trace minerals, the titanium, the hematite, the clay, it fundamentally changes how you view a piece of jewelry.
It really does.
You realize you are appreciating the natural artistry of the earth itself. You are wearing a microscopic record of geological history forged by chemical violence over millennia.
That is such an incredible way to look at it. But let's pivot to you, the listener, because understanding the geological violence that created a stone is only half the equation here.
The other half is wearing it.
Exactly. The other half is knowing the actual geometry of how to style it. It is not just about draping pretty stones over your collarbone.
Not at all.
It is a mathematical exercise in complementing your bone structure, your physical height, and your facial features.
Fashion often feels entirely subjective to people, but the mechanics of styling are deeply rooted in visual lines and proportion. If you get the geometry wrong, the jewelry actually works against your natural features.
Let's break down the rules of proportion, starting with height.
Let's do it.
So, if you are petite, say, under 5'4", the visual goal is usually to avoid truncating your frame.
You don't want to cut yourself in half visually.
Right. The recommendation from the document is to wear collar length or longer necklaces to create a longer vertical line. And for bracelets, you want to avoid wide, chunky cuffs. Instead, stacking several narrow bangles is far more flattering because it doesn't visually chop the forearm in half.
And there are nuances within that, too. For a full-figured petite woman, introducing sharp geometric shapes in earrings like distinct triangles or long rectangles provides a really flattering structured contrast to softer physical features.
Now, if you are of average height and build, your proportions naturally accommodate those wider pieces. That is exactly when a wide statement bracelet falls perfectly into visual balance.
Exactly.
But what if you were tall? Say, over 5'7".
Tall frames have a ton of versatility. Almost any necklace length works well. However, if your specific goal is to de-emphasize your height, a choker is incredibly effective.
Because it cuts across.
Yes, it creates a stark horizontal line across the neck, breaking up that vertical visual plane. Furthermore, dangling earrings are widely considered the most flattering design for taller women because they naturally echo the longer lines of the body.
Facial features play a huge role too.
Huge.
If you have round facial features, the objective of your jewelry is to add visual height and draw the observer's eye downward. To achieve this, you want to look for long necklaces, specifically chains falling anywhere between 28 and 32 inches.
Aside from physical geometry, there is also the social geometry of occasion matching. There is a deeply ingrained psychology to matching jewelry with the specific event you are attending.
Let's run through some scenarios. First one, a job interview.
Less is definitively more. You are there to communicate competence, and you do not want your jewelry distracting the interviewer from your face or your words.
Keep it simple.
Right. Avoid anything chunky and absolutely no dangling or noisy earrings. A clean watch, a plain gold or silver chain, or a single-strand bead necklace paired with simple pearl or diamond studs is the maximum you should aim for.
Compare that to something entirely different, like a beach wedding.
The environment completely flips the rules. At a beach wedding, the attire is usually relaxed, perhaps a plain, solid-colored sundress. That empty canvas is exactly where you want to deploy chunky, brightly colored, heavily beaded works.
Let the jewelry do the talking.
Yes. The jewelry becomes the focal point against the simple fabric.
And then there's the undisputed classic, the little black dress for an evening out.
The little black dress is all about structural elegance. You don't want to overpower it. A pair of stud pearls or teardrop pearls is often all you need. The dress and the subtle luminosity of the pearl do all the heavy lifting.
So what does this all mean? It means your jewelry box is essentially a toolbox. You are utilizing the physical geometry of chains, the proportion of bangles, and the chemistry of color to actively elevate your natural features and navigate different social environments.
And if you want to truly respect that toolbox, you have to appreciate the sheer physical labor required to stock it. The crafting process is incredibly intricate and, quite frankly, it's unforgiving.
Unforgiving is definitely the right word. Looking inside the modern workshop based on this document, the array of specialized tools is just intimidating.
It looks like a dentist's office sometimes.
It really does. You have heavy clay rollers, which are absolutely essential for evenly rolling out metal clay, polymer clay, or paper clay to a uniform thickness.
You need that consistency.
Right. And you have wire pin vices, which jewelers use to tightly twist wire, or just to provide an unyielding grip on materials that are just too small for human fingers.
And the pliers. You can't just use standard garage tools for this.
No hardware store pliers.
Definitely not. Jewelers rely on smooth-jawed, chain-nosed pliers to maneuver wire without scratching the metal. And then there are specialized crimping pliers.
Crimping sounds tricky.
It is. Crimping requires applying the exact right amount of pressure to crush a tiny metal tube to secure a wire. But you have to do it without applying so much force that you shatter the delicate glass bead resting right next to it.
The tension between those ancient techniques and modern tools is fascinating to me, especially when it comes to weaving.
Oh, weaving has an incredible history.
The origins of systematic bead weaving actually trace back to ancient Native American cultures. They first developed the technique of placing assorted beads on a string in complex geometric patterns. And the mechanics of the looms they developed are still the foundation of the craft today.
The physics of weaving hasn't changed at all, even if the materials have.
Right. You have ground looms, which are staked out horizontally right on the floor.
Yep.
Frame looms built from rigid sticks and boards. Bow looms, knitting looms. But the one that really caught my imagination is the backstrap loom.
That one is so clever.
It really is. The weaver actually ties one end of the loom to a fixed object like a sturdy tree, and the other end is strapped around the weaver's own waist.
So they are part of the machine.
Literally. They use their own body weight leaning backward to maintain the perfect tension on the strings while they work.
It's an intensely physical process. And even when they aren't using a loom, the simple act of knotting a string is an art form itself.
Just tying a knot.
Well, knotting the cord between each individual bead is what gives high-end jewelry that professional, expensive drape. Plus, it prevents all the beads from scattering across the floor if the necklace breaks.
But tying those knots requires surgical precision. Literally, in some cases.
Quite literally.
Jewelers often use hemostats, which are actual locking surgical clamps, to hold the tension of the thread perfectly flush against the bead while they tie it.
You need that tight grip.
Exactly. They use bead stoppers and tiny jeweler's files to manipulate the knot. And then to finish it off, they have to dab the tiny knot with specialized glue or clear nail polish, so the silk or nylon cord permanently locks and doesn't fray over time.
Given the intense technical skill required, it's no surprise that this craft has evolved into a massive entrepreneurial space.
Oh, the business side is huge.
Designers aren't just selling their finished pieces anymore, they're monetizing their technical knowledge.
And the demand for that knowledge is everywhere. Master beadworkers are setting up workshops and teaching classes in community colleges, tech schools, art galleries, and craft stores.
They teach at massive industry conventions too, like the Bead and Button Show.
Yes. You even find them teaching fine motor skills in rehabilitation centers or running workshops for vacationers on cruise ships.
It's brilliant.
And a core part of their curriculum is teaching students how to photograph their pieces write descriptions, and sell their new creations online on platforms like eBay. They basically teach you how to turn a meticulous hobby into a viable business.
It creates a wonderful cycle. Learning the craft connects you to this deep historical tradition, but the business side grounds you firmly in the modern economy.
It really is a massive journey we've taken today. I mean, we started with Neanderthals using twigs and stones to signal to one another.
We did.
We watched the Egyptian glass boom rise and fall. We analyzed the hidden titanium and hematite of the stones we pull from the earth. And we broke down the geometric rules of styling, all the way to the surgical clamps and crimping pliers used in modern workshops.
It is a profound synthesis. You have chemistry, geometry, history, and commerce, all resting right there against your collarbone.
So tonight, I want you to go home and look at your own jewelry box with fresh eyes. Pick up a piece you wear all the time. Actually, look at the facets cut into the glass to catch the light.
Notice the details.
Examine the tiny metal clasps and the crimp beads holding the wire together. Look closely for the knots hidden between the pearls, and just remember the millions of years of chemical restructuring hiding inside the stones you're holding.
This raises an important question, something for you to mull over after we finish. We talked about that 100,000-year-old string of beads found in 1922. It survived countless millennia to tell us a story about the people who sat around a fire and made it. If our ancient ancestors are remembered by those surviving bits of stone and shells, what will the jewelry we wear today? Our mass-produced glass bugle beads, our vibrantly colored polymer clays, and our imitation pearls tell the archaeologists of the year 102,026 about who we were, what we valued, and how we lived our lives.
That is an incredible thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We set out to give you the knowledge of a true jewelry aficionado, and I think we've unpacked exactly that. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep looking closely at the fascinating world around you.